The season is finally over. Hello and welcome to another episode of In the Trenches with Gang Green. I'm your host, Bubbs. Today is Sunday, January 5th, and the New York Jets just wrapped up their 2024 season with a victory over the Miami Dolphins 32-20. Jets get to 5-12 on the season, finish the year 3-5 at home. And as for the Miami Dolphins, with this loss and the Broncos win, they officially were eliminated from the playoffs, finishing 8-9 on the season and 3-6 on the road. So another year down, another year full of disappointment officially in the books. Jets finish it off with a win. So second year in a row now that the New York Jets have concluded their season with a victory. Of course, last year they went up to Foxborough and beat the Patriots in Bill Belichick's last game. Fast forward a year later, the New York Jets beat the Dolphins in their final game, and Gerard Mayo, also with New England, got fired. Not that they were playing the Patriots, but definitely some news there coming out of New England as well, which I'm sure we'll touch upon in this podcast. And we'll talk all about, as the offseason here rolls on with the coaching news and things like that. But this season's finally over. And I think as a lot of Jet fans, myself included, it's finally over. It's been a miserable year. It was a painful season. One of the worst seasons as a Jet fan that I really have ever lived through. I think one of the worst seasons many Jet fans have ever lived through, from the expectations going into the year. You have all of that happen last year with the Aaron Rodgers torn Achilles, everything like that. And, you wait all this time, all off season, make the moves, Mike Williams, got Tyron Smith, trade for Hassan Reddick, all this hype, all this excitement going into another year of Rodgers, really the first healthy year of Rodgers, hopefully. And I think it just sums up like this. If you would have told me at the beginning of the season that Aaron Rodgers would have played all 17 games, that Aaron Rodgers would have thrown, roughly 30 touchdown passes, with today's 4-touchdown performance, he finishes with 28 TDs on the season. If you would have told me all that and then get Devontae Adams in the middle of it all, I would have thought, and this team as a whole, let's be honest, as a whole, stay relatively healthy. Yeah, there was a couple major injuries, but stay relatively healthy. If you would have told me all of that at the beginning of this season, every single Jet fan would have signed up for that script, because you would think to yourself that would have led to 10, 11, maybe 12 wins. Realistically, though, probably around 11. And instead, all that pretty much happens, but the Jets fall to, finish the year to 5-12. And it's just another one of those seasons as you sit there today in the fourth quarter, even though they're winning for, great, they won a meaningless game. It doesn't really mean a whole lot. Everybody's mindset right now is just all eyes towards the offseason at this point. A win or a loss today didn't mean anything in the grand scheme of things. But you just look at this season as a whole, and it's another one of these same old Jet type of seasons where you go in with excitement the last 2 years, the whole Aaron Rodgers era, and it falls flat on its face. 14 years. 2014 was bad. Out of the years that I've been watching this team for, vividly remember, obviously 2014 was bad. 4-12 year, started really poorly, but that year there wasn't many expectations. You expected the team not to do very well. 2016 was very similar to this year in terms of, right, you go into the year 2016 coming off of the 2015 10-6 season. This year was similar to that. It's also just how unlikable this team was also very similar to 2016, with the way things went there that year, and this season very similar to, a team that just is a bunch of names and not really an actual team. Talent's there, but there's no coaching and there's no actual team chemistry, a broken locker room. Obviously 2020 was brutal, but there was no expectations going into that year. And even last year, it was brutal, but you didn't have Rodgers. So you technically had the whole Rodgers excuse floating over the team's head the entire year. And you hope that 2023 would kind of get forgotten about if they went out in 2024 and took care of business, which they did not. So it's painful. You want to go back to 2011, the Victor Cruz 99-yard touchdown. There's been a lot of painful moments. I don't think any really tops this year, though, from the expectations going in to where we are now, 5-12, looking at a new head coach, a new regime yet again. is just painful, and it's frustrating. It's annoying. It's miserable is really what it is, that we're just in this constant cycle of football purgatory that this team just can't get out of. So that's just some opening thoughts. In terms of the game today itself, Rodgers had a good day. 4 touchdowns. Started the day awful. I mean, the first play of the game, pick for him. That was terrible. Tries to get it to Devontae right away. Just forced it to him, picked off. And, right then and there, you're thinking to yourself, man, this is going to be one of these games. Because early on, the Jets could not move the football. I mean, early on in this game, the first couple drives, the Jets couldn't do anything. The first 4 drives, you had the pick, then 3 punts in a row before they ended up going 8 plays, 79 yards for the touchdown, where Rodgers found Conklin in the second quarter there for his 500 touchdown. But you're thinking to yourself, honestly, I'm sitting there thinking to myself, with the way the offense was playing, it looked very similar to Miami, or Buffalo, rather. They couldn't move the ball. They looked disinterested. Rodgers threw the pick. They just looked dejected. Rightfully so. They're checked out. This team's been checked out. We've known this. But I'm thinking to myself, is Rodgers really, he might not get 500. There was a really good chance you're thinking to yourself midway through that first quarter and even going into the second quarter, thinking to yourself, this might be one of those situations where we talked about in the preview pod yesterday that you give Rodgers a half. If they look terrible, then you go to Tyrod maybe in the second half, or you see Tyrod at some point. But that wasn't the case. He ended up turning it on. 4 touchdowns on the day, 1 to Devontae, 1 to Lazard, 1 to Conklin, and 1 to Brees. Conklin's the one who catches his 500 touchdown. I would probably say that was not on most people's prediction card. I think if you had to predict, it would have gone to Devontae and then probably either Lazard or Garrett, not Conklin. But Conklin caught it. So Rodgers gets the 500 in a Jet uniform for those who care. I really don't. He's not remembered for a Jet uniform. His statistics, his career accolades will all be remembered in Green Bay. Rightfully so. He came here, won 5 games, technically 6 games as a starter, and lost 12. So not ultimately good enough, as we all know. And force feed, a very, very heavy target share day for Devontae. 12 targets for him. Garrett only had 5. Lazard had 3. Surprisingly, Lazard actually caught 3 of his targets. Lazard probably could have had more targets, honestly. There was like a couple plays where he was running open. So I'm surprised he didn't have maybe 5 or 6 targets. Some of the targets to Devontae, I could have seen probably Rodgers throwing to Lazard, but not the case there. Run game today, Zay Davis had a couple nice runs. He had one really nice 20-yard run. I feel like overall for his role as kind of the third running back, I think Davis had a pretty strong rookie year, especially down the stretch here. That Miami game earlier in the year, or not really earlier, a couple weeks ago now, that Miami game, he scored the touchdown, first of his career. Braylon Allen on that 4th and 1, got the ball and was able to convert, got hit behind the line of scrimmage, but kept going. That's more of what we need to see next year is Braylon Allen and those short down and distances, him getting the football. Love Breece Hall. We all know what Breece Hall can do, but you have a short yardage back. You have a guy of Braylon Allen's size and stature for those situations. Those are not meant to be shotgun runs to Breece Hall on 4th and 1, 3rd and 1s. Those should be going to Braylon. So we did see that today. Breece Hall broke out a couple nice runs, had the one big 17-yard game. So they rushed for over 118 yards today. I feel like that's the first time they've done that in a very, very long time. It feels like it's been weeks. I don't know right off the dome the last time they did that, but you're going into this game, they were the 31st ranked rushing offense in football. So to surpass 100 yards when they were averaging only a tick over 80 on the year is definitely, I guess, a positive from this game. 90.2 yards per game from a rushing perspective going into today's game, and they had over 100 there. So defensively, I thought DJ Reed, I actually thought had a better day than I expected. I thought DJ Reed was going to get toast today. I thought there was going to be a time where Jalen Waddle or Tyreek Hill was just going to blow by him. Not just because of his comments, but to be fair, DJ Reed, wrapped up today what was a very solid Jet career. One of Douglas's better free agent signings. We'll look back on DJ Reed's tenure as a Jet with fond memories, right? We'll look back on him as a positive. We'll look back on him as a good Jet, the 3 years he spent here. Ultimately, of course, him and Sauce, this year, I know there's definitely been some bumps there, but the previous 2 years, him and Sauce were easily the best 1-2 corner duo in the NFL. he's going to go elsewhere and get big money. I think even if the Jets were winning this year, DJ Reed's going to go elsewhere. We knew that DJ Reed was going to get number one cornerback money elsewhere, and it was not going to be here. Even if the Jets were 12-5 right now, getting ready to play in the wild card game next weekend, DJ Reed future with the Jets probably still would not be here long term. But either way, I thought he actually played well today, considering his comments. I thought, because he's always struggled against Hill and Waddle. He always gets burned against them at least once every time they play them. They always have his number. Today, that wasn't the case, though. He played a lot better. I thought you could guarantee today that he would have gotten burnt at least once, just because of the comments, checked out, right? Kind of catches, maybe Tyler Huntley catches him by surprise. But that didn't happen. The defense today, they played a lot better than they did last week. And, it was against Tyler Huntley. Devon Achane had a couple runs today. He had a pretty solid day. He had the one big 60-yard run. But even if you take that run away, it was still 10 carries for around 100, or for still about 10 carries for around 60 yards. So, was averaging, even outside of that 160-plus yard run, he was still averaging around 6 yards per carry. Miami takes a lot of losses in the run game, but, for the most part, Achane, 11 carries, 121 yards, solid day there. Johnny Smith had a touchdown, kind of average. Jets struggle against tight ends. He forced a couple turnovers. Ashton Davis with 2 interceptions. The ball magnet himself, Ashton Davis, and maybe his final game as a Jet, will be a free agent. He gets an interception. You had 2 fumble recoveries, and that's the frustrating part of all this, right? Whether you're rooting for a win, rooting for a loss, don't care. You're numb. You're broken. You're kind of like me, where it's just like, get me out of this game. No major injuries to any key players, and let's go into the offseason and find who our next regime is going to be, which is where I'm at. The fact that it does frustrate you a little bit that we have to wait until week 18 where this team has a big turnover performance. And I understand it's Tyler Huntley, and my God, some of his pocket presence is awful. I mean, there are some things that Tyler Huntley does in the pocket that just make you scratch your head. And it seemed like there was some miscommunication between him and his receivers at time, especially earlier in the game, where it was ruled an incompletion, but he was looking for Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill was supposed to kind of run an in breaker, like an in route, and he goes outside on the flat to the sideline, and Huntley gets taken down there. But the fact that we had to wait until week 18, I mean, how many times over the last couple of years has this team not been able to fall on fumbles? How many times the last couple of years? How many times this year has this team not been able to capitalize on interceptions? And then today you get 2 interceptions, you get 2 fumble recoveries. I mean, everything that that have plagued the Jets the last couple of years did not plague them today in a meaningless week 18 game. I mean, that's typical Jets. Am I right? Win gets you to 5-12 on the year, and you go out there and do things that the team really hasn't done all year, which is force turnovers and capitalize on mistakes from the other team. But they did that today. So there's that. That's it from the game. I mean, look, that's really it from a game analysis standpoint, right? Rodgers, 23 of 36, 274, 4 touchdowns. Just back to the defense here for a second. Quincy Williams continues to fly around. He's a guy that even through the highs and lows put together another productive season. Hassan Reddick actually registered as a half a sack today, so finished the year with a whole 1 sack. So big numbers there for Reddick. Bruce Hector had a sack. Javon Kinlaw had a sack. Will McDonald had a half a sack. Heck, even Michael Clemens had a pressure on the one play where Huntley just threw the ball away. Clemens had a pressure. So all of the massive failures this year played a role in today's game. Clemens, Javon Kinlaw, and Hassan Reddick all got around Huntley today. How's that for comedic relief, I guess? Or how's that for, I don't know, coincidence? 3 of probably the worst defensive linemen on this team this year were around the quarterback today. So how's that for a cherry on top to what has been a otherwise horrendous season? Greg Joseph hit his field goals. So there's that. Was 3 for 3 on extra points. So he comes in and takes care of business there. But yeah, man, it's tough. It's tough. I don't got a whole lot to say on this game, from this front. And I guess just from quick perspective here. This is more stuff that we'll talk about, I'm sure, tomorrow and as the weeks go on here. And tomorrow, the Jets will have all their exit interviews, so we'll cover that tomorrow. Kind of a big recap pod. I'll do my season recap pod probably middle of the year or middle of the week or so. But with the new regime coming in, there's going to be so much news with interviewing guys. There's going to be a ton of coaches that get fired tomorrow. So how does that affect the search? Things really start to pick up tomorrow with Black Monday. But the Patriots got kind of a head start on Black Monday with firing Gerard Mayo before, he could even get to Monday. And it's not a positive for the Jets. They brought in Vrabel. From all accounts, the interview went well. But then again, I don't think you can read into that too much. I don't think that Patriots, this is as simple as it is. The Patriots firing Mayo is more of, we want to get Vrabel. It's not as much of Mayo is just that bad. It's more so they want Vrabel. And they value Vrabel that much. And Vrabel has been rumored to want the Patriots job. And, many people have reported that the Jets have a good chance at Vrabel if the Patriots job does not become available. Many reporters, multiple reporters across the NFL, not even just reporters. You don't have to be an NFL reporter to know this. You just have to be a fan. If you're just an average NFL fan and the history between Vrabel and that Patriots organization is there, that he would be their top. That would be his top destination in New England. He would be their top option. Now they still got to go through the whole process and all that stuff, but the chances of the Jets getting Vrabel took a hit today. It did, no doubt about it. It took a major hit today. If the Patriots job was not open, I would think that there's a pretty good chance that Vrabel would come here. Now that the Patriots job's open, I don't see how he does not pass that up. I don't. And, look, the process still has to play out, but this is where it's going to get interesting. How do the Jets then pivot if a Vrabel's not there? Where do they go? Are they still looking at maybe another veteran guy like a Flores, Kingsbury? Does a Mike McCarthy enter into the chat? There's a whole list. You're going to interview Rex on Tuesday. How serious are the Jets about Rex? And even with the Flores and the Aaron Glenn guys, they're in the playoffs. So you can't hire them right now. You still have to ask for permission. That could take a while until those guys come to the Jets or get hired by the Jets or get interviews just because of the window that's there in terms of them being in the playoffs and them being under contract with another team. So Kingsbury, another name I think I just mentioned. So look, the Patriots firing Mayo is a hit. It's a hit to the chances of Vrabel coming here. They got the first interview in. I think that's also part of probably Vrabel sending a message to the Patriots saying, hey, I'm interviewing with the Jets. Robert Kraft, do something. He did. And now it's like, all right, I want this job. So we'll see. We'll see how it all plays out. But Mayo getting fired was, look, I don't think Mayo's a good coach, but I also think it's more so just the Patriots. If Vrabel is not available, New England would have held on to Mayo for another year. Because you can also look at the Gerard Mayo thing and say he had the worst roster in football. They've got a ton of cap space coming up this year. They've got a rookie quarterback. They'll have the 4th overall pick. They've got a lot of good things. If they can execute in the offseason, he can be successful in year 2. But with Vrabel being there and the history there, Ring of Honor, all that stuff, they could also look at it and say, Vrabel's 10 times better than Gerard Mayo. Come in here. You already have Drake May. You've got all that money. You've got a top 5 pick. Here you go. Here's the keys. Let's get back to winning in just a couple months here when 2025 comes around, which Vrabel can probably do. He can honestly probably do that here with the Jets. He's that type of coach on this market. So that's that. But, yeah, that's it. 2024 down, 2025, here we come. In terms of Tankathon, Jets today, right now, have the 7th pick. They can get as high as 6, depending on the Lions-Vikings game. So we'll see how that all plays out there. But most likely picking either 6th or 7th. So 3, technically 4 spots higher than last year because they traded back to 11. So very interesting to see what happens in the draft. Those are all conversations that'll happen here over the next couple weeks, next couple months with the draft, new regime. What do they want? Future of Rodgers. I'll be honest. I don't know. And I'll kind of close out with this. Like the Aaron Rodgers today, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but he kept the ball after Breece Hall scored. and then which was his final touchdown pass of the game. And then Devontae kept the ball after he scored. And then they kept the ball after his 500 touchdown, which is normal, right? That ball 500 touchdown, that'll end up in one of his trophy cases one day. But I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into this, and I do think his time here as a Jet is done. But doesn't it seem a little bit like it feels likelier that he's retiring if Devontae's taking the ball back, like that's his last catch with Rodgers? Because you would assume if Rodgers comes back, Devontae's going to be wherever he's going to be, right? Rodgers keeping the ball after Brees scores. I mean, why would he do that if he's going to play another year? If you get what I'm saying, right? I think maybe it's just, last touchdown maybe as a Jet, but he doesn't need that ball. Like 500 is perfectly fine. I don't know. Maybe that's just the vibe I'm getting. Maybe it's because the fourth quarter, I was so ready for this game to end that I started to think outside of the box, maybe a little too much, but the collecting of the footballs and keep holding on to the footballs, especially late in that game, make you wonder if maybe Rodgers has already made up his mind and the people close to him like Devontae know, or at least are assuming or have a strong feeling because they're around him every day, that this is it, not just with the Jets, but in the NFL in general. So I don't know. We'll see. But that's it. 2024 is over with. You think back to March, April of 2023 when the Rodgers went on McAfee, then when the trade officially happened just before the 2023 draft. And if you would have told me we'd be sitting here on January 5th, 2024, or 2025 rather, wrapping up 2 years with Aaron Rodgers, and it accumulates to a 7-10 season where he tore his Achilles 4 snaps in, and a 5-12 season where he played the whole year, but you fire the head coach, fire the general manager, I would have thought you were crazy. But here we are. It's been a long road. It's been miserable. It's been frustrating. But I did say at the episode that they officially acquired Aaron Rodgers, I said, no matter if it's good or if it's good or bad, whatever happens with Rodgers, I said it that day, it's going to be a wild ride. And I think it's pretty fair to say it's been a wild ride. It's been a wild ride from the torn Achilles to the entirety of last offseason to the possibility of him returning last year, to this year with the 2-1 start and then firing Saleh, then trading for Devontae and then firing Douglas. The bombshell reports, multiple of them going back to last year, then to this year. I mean, it's been a wild ride. It hasn't been a wild ride for good reasons, but it's been a wild ride. And now it feels like it's finally over. So that'll do it. We'll be back tomorrow with all the exit press conferences. Any other news comes out, start to really look ahead to the offseason as we dive into what's next for this team. And then, during the week, we'll have more content. I'll probably have like a full season recap up as well at some point, but tomorrow will be all the exit press conferences, what the players have to say, locker room clean out day. I'm sure, I don't know, they don't have a GM, they don't have a head coach. So usually Douglas and Saleh speak tomorrow. I think it's Woody should speak tomorrow. Like, if he actually had balls, he would sit up there in front of a microphone and answer questions from the media. I don't see that happening, but we'll cover everything that happens tomorrow from Locker Cleanout Day. So stay tuned for that. Once again, I appreciate you all so much for tuning into these episodes every single post game. Appreciate you all so much for tuning into the episodes all year long. It means a lot to me. It's been obviously a very long year. It's been a frustrating year, but I've tried to create as unique as content as possible. I know a lot of what has happened this year has unfortunately been repetitive. I know there's probably a lot of things that I've said on this podcast that I've said on every other podcast. So, I've tried to keep the content fresh. I've tried to keep the content, I tried to keep the content as unique as possible, even in a year where it was a lot of the same results and a lot of the same problems that we've seen with this franchise year in and year out. So I appreciate you all so much. And as painful as it is to say, the offseason is our regular season. It really is. Once the regular season starts, that's when the Jets as a franchise feel like going into offseason mode. So cheers to hopefully a better 2025 with a new regime and maybe some winning mixed in as well, because that would be nice. Anyway, that'll do it. And we will talk to you guys tomorrow. See the highs and the lows, another year down. as always, JETS, 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 Jets.